Hello there, welcome. On this channel, I animate stop-motion videos, but sometimes I try to make custom figures to animate them. Previously, I've made a huge articulated dreadnought at 1/12 scale from 40K. This time, however, I'm going to make a small articulated cat figure based on the cat character from the manhwa Solo Farming in the Tower. And keeping to the 1/12 scale, I'm going to use Bodikun as the baseline. Now, unfortunately, I spend most of my skill points into animating stop motion, meaning I'm going to need all the help I can get. To have a better idea of the character, I'm starting off camera, gathering all the image references of the wandering cat merchant Theo that I can find. And I figured a simple sketch outlining a rudimentary shape of a bipedal cat will help. For the figure's articulation, I decided to use some of these extra joints I got from various knockoff figures and failed off-camera experiment, as well as some leftover clay that I have here in the studio. I don't have a lot of other colors, so I can't exactly be picky about it. To start off, I noticed that the smallest joint has a similar diameter of a toothpick, so I wrap a smaller amount of clay around a toothpick and hope that will work. And it's a good thing it did. Then I figured stabbing the clay with the joints and attaching them would make a basic component for the figure's chest and hip component. Now, will it work? Is it symmetrical? Your guess is as good as mine. But judging from the length of this video, assuming that you didn't skip, I either made it work or made a monstrosity. But either way, I appreciate you being here. Now for the basic handless, feetless thing here, I can make any small adjustment before moving to the next step, which is making the toe beans, which apparently looks like a bean but not actual beans. And as you can tell, it's incredibly small that the camera struggles to focus at maximum zoom. Sculpting something this size is a bit of a struggle, but I managed to put together the metacarpal and the metatarsal pad. To complete the hands and feet or front and hind paws, I did my best at making the general impression of the itty-bitty paws to scale. Then, using a tweezers instead of my chunky fingers, I put the itty-bitty toes onto the itty-bitty paws. After that, all that's left to do is to blend into the baked hard socket that I've made with the toothpick. Before fleshing out the figure, literally, it's time to test the range of articulation. This will help me determine which to keep and how I'm going to proceed in giving the figure its unique bipedal cat characteristic, and also to see the baked result, which kinda looks nice. By this point, I ran out of the dark green olive clay, so I went ahead and used the white clay instead. Since I don't want the figure to be top heavy, I started by wrapping aluminum foil around the bottom torso. This will save me some of the white clay and make the figure hopefully lighter. And after wrapping around the foil and blending in to the hip component, I added more material to give it shape to the belly of this cute little beast. I did the same step to the top side of the torso off camera and adding more materials for detailing. With the top and bottom torso done, I can now put them together without the skeletal joint to see how they would hold up against one another, and make adjustment where needed. To construct the headpiece, I got a little ambitious and wanted to try to make the movable eyes like this Figma L-Sub faceplate and many other figures that you may have come across. I've always liked how this is made because it literally solves the viewing direction problem on most figures. I figured I should start with one eye by wrapping aluminum foil and crumpling it into a ball and making it smooth by layering more foil on top. This will act as a placeholder for the eye for now, so I can work on the headpiece. And after making somewhat of an identical piece for the other eye, I folded another foil and pressed them down onto the eye's placeholder, which will act as a frame and later as a sockets for both the actual eyes. From there, I placed more of the white clay onto the folded up foil, which will be the face of the headpiece. Once it looks somewhat decent for a face, I added more material so it looks more like a face and less of a crumpled up aluminum foil. Then it's time to work on the back side of the headpiece / faceplate. To make things simple, I took an impression of a ball head joint by pressing it down where the neck will be. This of course has an unintentional consequences. Remember this important detail, but more on that later. For now though, it looks functional. Not pretty, but good enough. I did the same process and made the back of the headpiece along with the ball joint impression to complete the whole of the headpiece. Additionally, to prevent the headpiece from constantly falling apart, I've installed a plug on the front piece and a socket on the back. Again, not pretty, but functional. Since I couldn't exactly use the same ball joint piece for the neck, I went ahead and made one myself. To do that, I thought of using toothpick for the clay to stick onto and fill the ball socket from the ball impression in the headpiece. By pressing in the clay material into the socket, making it compact, I'm hoping I'll close up any empty gaps and giving it a better chance of articulation. And of course, after opening it back up, it turned out to be anything but a ball. So I rounded it with my fingers and check it against the two headpieces. After several attempts of refining it, it looked more like a ball compared to the first compact pressed. Again, not a perfect sphere, but functional. You'll notice me saying that a few more times. But anyway, I went ahead and made the neck piece. Not completely sure if I'm doing it right, but at the same time my thought was, I won't know until I try. So that's what I did. And it turned out to be a bit of a monstrosity. I quickly scrapped the idea and well, I found out the hard way that doing precision drilling with a tight hold with my hand is almost impossible on camera. So I drilled the center of the peg off camera as I don't want to break the little ball that I just made. After checking that it fits, it's time to put the headpiece in place and immediately look much better. To further refining the headpiece, I went ahead and made the ears with much of the image references that I can find, blending the clay in onto the back of the headpiece with a precision tool. I figured giving it a pointy ears for now works perfectly as a base for refinement later. With the base of the body complete, I began to move on to the tail. I made the socket with the same way I've made previously with the toothpick and made a single thick noodle for its tail. Then I combine and blend the socket in with the tail together, then onto the main body and let the body itself decide how should the tail rest as the figure stand on its own. After baking it, it looks and feel pretty good as it is, so I moved on to refine the face of the cat. Now making the face identical to the manhwa is out of my scope, so I'm taking some creative liberty and some help from an actual cat named Star and study his facial features as well as any skeletal structure for better understanding. Quick tangent, if you're wondering why the cat is named Star, it's because my mom saw the diamond-shaped fur pattern on the cat's back and looked like a 4-pointed star. And since then, Star, the cat, is named. Eventually, because how mischievous Star personality is, I expanded his name to Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3. So, Astarion or Star, the orange cat, will be the IRL reference point for the figure. After more or less satisfied with the cat's face, it's time to refine the rest of the figure's component, especially the neck and ears with a blend of real cat from Star and the cat merchant Theo. But then, I noticed something. Here on the headpiece, the socket is offset to the right. Remember when I took the impression of the ball head joint where the neck sits? Turns out when you don't find the center where the neck is supposed to be, you might unintentionally create a figure with scoliosis. So to fix this, it's time to conduct additional surgery on both the front and back of the headpiece. Then it's back to the process of adding back the same materials and baking it. Fortunately, this material is somewhat more forgiving when it comes to adhering the same base material onto itself. And much better. But we're not done with the surgery yet. It's time to remove the aluminum eyes off camera because, as mentioned earlier, precision drilling with a tight hold is almost impossible on camera. Post-face surgery, I think it looks decent. Is it symmetrical? I have no idea. But to me, it looks good enough. Moving on, I've also installed additional plug with toothpick and sockets on the front end. as well as improving the top side socket pegs so they wouldn't come apart easily. Taking inspiration once again from Theo from solo farming in the tower, I really like the hoodie cloak design, but instead of that, I'm making more of a scarf short cape. Is that a word? Well, it is now. Anyway, I went with an aluminium base as the frame and found out I still have a small chunk of that dark green olive clay. So I used some of that and wrapped it around the base scarf and sculpted a scarf. Then, making use of the top cap of my mechanical pencil, I found the rounded end is a good fit for the coin medallion for the cat. The cap was also useful to stamp impression on the scarf itself to place the coin medallion at the center of the scarf. Additionally, I also went ahead and added a star insignia based on Star the cat. At this point, the bipedal cat and scarf were fully sculpted and ready for paint. I'm incredibly inexperienced when it comes to painting things, but from the tips I got from forums, videos, miniature painting online is that priming on the object for paint to adhere better seems like a good idea. So I went ahead and disassembled all of them except for the scarf and applied gray prime coat on them. And then reassembled them just to see what it looks like. Great cat. Taking inspiration from both cats, Real Orange, Star the cat, and Cat Merchant Theo, which has a more yellowish base, I went ahead and just grabbed the generic yellow and orange acrylic paint mix and started airbrushing. Since this is my second time using the airbrush, I figured it'll be a good practice and have you guys watching give us some feedback if you're good with this equipment. I start with the yellowish orange base, followed by a darker orange shade using a regular brush to give it that distinct pattern with some creative liberties. The white areas of the cat were then built up through multiple layers, some parts more than others. As a homage for Star the cat, a diamond-shaped star is painted on the back of this figure. Most people will probably won't see it, but at least you know it's there. To give the eyes more of a highlight, it needs an eyeliner. Unfortunately, the brush I use isn't small or fine enough, but I got this brush which has a lot of zeros on it, which must mean it is. So I went ahead and used that for a more precision control on the eyeline and a subtle pinkish paint on the nose. For the eyeballs, I figured I should use this ball joint as it's quite similar to the size of the aluminium eye placeholder that I used earlier, rather than making them myself like the neck joint piece. To make the eyes stand out more, I apply a thin white paint around where the pupils will be, followed by a dark paint for said pupil. After a quick test, and even without anything extra, it kinda looked quite good. Functional even. However, to prevent the paint from scraping and make the eyes a bit more reflective when it catches light, I decided to pour a 24-hour curing resin on top of a silicone block. I don't have the UV resin that most craft YouTubers use, so I'll have to work with what I have in the studio. And after 24 hours, it doesn't look that bad. But before that, I'll need to get the short cape done. I used a rough measurement by paper to make a simple yet symmetrical cutout would be a straightforward solution.
Off with his head!
This is an old rag that I found which is almost perfect, so to get as close to the color of the clay, I decided to soak in the brown and black acrylic paint I have on hand for 24 hours. Also because mainly I don't have any fabric dye at the moment. Finally, I decided to finish off with some detailing of the whiskers with the white paint on folded paper. Mainly because freehanding straight lines isn't the best idea for me. And after putting in the eyes, I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And for those who are curious, I basically made a tiny hole at the back plate so I can manipulate the viewing direction of the eyes. As I'll probably going to manipulate it a lot in future videos, I decided to give it an additional protective layer of sealant coat so the paint doesn't wear out easily. I've also switched out some of the joints to a more appropriate color since I have that lying around because they are somewhat close to the orange color. To finish off the short cape, I've installed a bendable wire to hold its shape better, followed by gluing the scarf onto the short cape with this all-purpose adhesive glue. Giving the center medallion a gold coating seems appropriate, so I did, along with a light green paint onto the scarf to complement the short cape better. And this, articulated by Pedal Cat figure, is finished. All it really needs now is a name. And since it's based heavily on the Wandering Cat merchant, Theo from the Solo Farming in the Tower manhwa, and also Star the Orange Cat, what do you think a suitable name for this little articulated figure? Maybe Star, like the cat, or Starion, or something else? Post your answer down in the comments, and I'll also put out a community poll post on the ones with the most likes so everyone can vote on it. But that's all for now. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, you know where the like button is to give it more reach. And if you like a huge articulated model instead, I've also made a dreadnought at 1/12 scale from Warhammer 40k. Video links will be down in the description, as well as my Patreon page if you like to support. But regardless, I hope you have a good day or evening, wherever you are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.